Pick the Nintendo Shack and pray. Frederick from Fire Emblem Awakening says, yo.
Greetings, Koopalings, and welcome back to the Nintendo Shack. My name is Donnie Reese, and this evening I'm joined by my Nintendo mates, Miss Rebecca and Mr. Garrett. How are you two doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah. But of course, nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants to hear our star guest, special guest for the evening, Jeff Grubb Snacks. Jeffrey Grubb. Jeff Grubb is here. Welcome to the Nintendo Shack.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. I do want to hear from them, so I don't know what you're talking about,
Donnie. We are absolutely just honored and super excited to have you here on the Nintendo Shack on our show. We've got so many things to talk about. I wrote down some bullet points, so if you allow me to stoke your flame a little bit, Jeff. 2020 will undoubtedly go down in history in the annuals as the year of COVID-19. But in the gaming journalism space, 2020 might be remembered as the year of Grubb.
That was the idea from the beginning. You
absolutely
planned it out, man. I just wanted to take over. That was the whole thing. I caused all of this.
You've become the leading voice in video games this year, and I don't say that lightly. And when I say it, I mean it. We were asked earlier today, like, should I be following Jeff Grubb? And I was like, if you want to be informed on the bleeding edge of what is happening in video game space, then you absolutely have to. I have had every tweet of yours sent directly to my phone on alert for like the last 8 months.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't really know how it happened. I've been doing kind of this sort of reporting for a few years now, and it felt like most people just ignore it. I don't know what it is. And then this summer, it just sort of it all unfurled all at once, and it's a reminder that this job is so unpredictable. Like we try to do when we're writing our stories, we try to what are the important metrics that we're trying to reach to ensure that that we're accomplishing our goals. And you can always just throw it all out the window because you never know what's going to take off and what's going to do well. And I never ever could have predicted that me just kind of joking around, like having like a pretend beef with Jeff Keighley and having my own summer game mess would be a thing that would kind of make it all come together. But it did, and it's been fun. It's been a good time. It's been stressful as well, just trying to keep up with everything. And making sure that because now here's another thing that's happened. I'm getting more tips than ever, and it's really difficult now to tell what is real.
To track them all down.
Yeah, it's much more difficult to sift through that stuff when everyone's sending you something slightly different, and some of this stuff has a ring of truth to it. But are they just hearing it from someone else that I didn't know is already spreading it around as a rumor? It's tough, but it's still a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah. Just to remind everybody, Jeff, you reported on the Mass Effect Trilogy remasters, Game Pass, and Xbox information. You've become the go-to source for E3. You talked about a new Paper Mario game. You talked about Pikmin Deluxe coming, 3D World ports. You reviewed the Paper Mario. I read your review. I absolutely loved your review. You're a big reason why I kept my pre-order and played it. And
I'm glad to hear that.
I would agree with your review as well, though. I mean, you were quick to point out all the things that it didn't do, but you were also quick to point out that it does a lot of good stuff as well.
Yeah. It's a good game. I'm glad most people kind of came around to that way of thinking, I think, in the end.
Selfishly, I brought you here for one and one reason only, and that is to put the smackdown on Miss Rebecca, who doesn't believe that we are going to be playing Mario remasters this year. Jeff, get her. She doesn't believe.
Jeff,
get her. Do it.
You have to understand, this has been the biggest debate on the Nintendo Shack podcast for months now, back and forth. This
You're just not a true believer.
She refuses to believe it.
I mean, is it thing, or you're like, no, they're not really doing that. I don't believe that, or you just don't want to believe it. Which one is it?
Oh no, I want to believe it. It's one of those things where I have felt like it's too good to be true.
It's unbelievable.
Right. That makes sense. I get that. Yeah. I kind of felt the same way, and I don't blame people for my coworker Mike Minotti is also a big Mario fan, and I talked to him a little bit more about this stuff than other people because he's going to keep it quiet. And we bounce stuff back and forth, and he's like, I don't believe it anymore. I'm like, okay, I get it. I mean, I've never been wrong on anything I've told you, Mike. But all right. It's coming. I mean, it's what they're doing this year. That is their plan. Like that's what they're like. That was always the plan for this year. It was always going to be, I think, COVID-19 did mess them up, but I think this year was always going to be up for like debate among fans about whether it was a good year for Nintendo or not. And it was going to come down to the fact that it was a lot of these remasters and a lot of bundling up stuff like Mario. But Mario was kind of always the big thing. Now, is it all going to come out like by the end of the year? I imagine the Mario remasters will. The Super Mario 3D World Deluxe. I was talking about this on Nate the Hate shows a little bit ago. That one could slip into early next year because they're timing Pikmin 3 for October. It feels like maybe that could have been a time for one of those Mario games, and maybe December, maybe January for 3D World Deluxe. But that stuff's still real. It's still coming. That's the plan.
Point Donnie.
Let's wait till Nintendo comes out and does it, and then we'll distribute the points.
Yeah, I mean, there's a Nintendo wild card that should be coming up in the next week.
Yeah, it's so yes, and it's still. People put a lot of stock in where I put stuff on this rundown. I guess, are all your listeners familiar with my summer game mess list thing?
I'm not sure if they are, but I can back you up and validate this. You moved your Nintendo wild card, and I think every Nintendo blog was like, in the next 14 days.
I'm like,
it's going to happen.
I did move it to be... Yes, I was trying to indicate something there, but man, you guys take it very literally. Like you said, it was coming between these dates, and I'm like, no, I kind of put it between those dates. And the more important thing are the words "wild card." Yeah, there should be some stuff coming up soon. I've heard a lot of different things. Again, I mean, I'm hearing a lot more than I used to, so it's hard. But it does sound like it's going to end up being something like it was in March, where. There might be an indie thing, then there might be a direct, whether or not it's a full direct or not, or one of these smaller partner showcases. My gut is telling me that there is going to be a big general direct here coming pretty soon, based on the stuff I'm hearing. Whether or not that's by the end of the month, I don't think it's before the 22nd. So people should just get that in there. Yeah, the thing that's happening before the 22nd is not a big general direct, I don't think. But going forward, I think we should be getting one of those relatively soon, within the next month or so, I think. But yeah, that doesn't mean that there won't be other stuff to get excited about. They did announce Pikmin 3 Deluxe, and that was a nice one to like get off the slate too. It's like, I think I talked about that way back in April or May. And that had been a rumor going around for a long time at that point, but it was like, nice to be like, okay, see, no, that's real. Let's move ahead to the next thing. But yeah, the Nintendo should have a lot to talk about, and it's gonna have to start doing that soon. And I think it probably will start with an Indie World showcase. Is that what those things are called now? I can't remember.
Yeah, I miss the Indie stuff, but Indie World, I guess. Hey, that super excites me. Everybody that listens to our podcast know I am dying for Sports Story. I am so like, where is Sports Story? And it's got to be the next time Nintendo talks about indies. It's got to be there. I believe. I think. Can
I hope
please?
So. Like details like that. It's like I definitely don't know all that kind of thing. Like everything that's going to be in the indie showcase. No way. I don't know. I'm just as hopeful as you are. I hope that's there. I hope Silk Song's there. I wouldn't be surprised if those things aren't. I think just based on like. If those games were coming out, I feel like they probably would have been announced by now, like dates and stuff. But you never know. Maybe they are. I think they do feel like they have to wait for Nintendo to do a direct or an indie showcase before they can maybe announce some of this stuff, because it's very hard to speak out to the Nintendo audience without Nintendo's help. Nintendo kind of has to be the wind at your wings with that kind of stuff, because Nintendo has such a direct line to people, specifically because of the Nintendo Directs, but even just because the way the fan base works. We want to hear it from Nintendo in a way that like with Sony and Microsoft, it doesn't really matter if we hear it from them. It's slightly different.
That's true.
So that gives me hope that we'll still hear about Sports Story in one of these upcoming showcases. But whether we will or not, I don't know for sure.
I can imagine that it will be a random YouTube video again in Nintendo, because that's what they're trying to go for these days. Is like, let's put another random YouTube video into the Nintendo channel. So do you think that's going to try to be more of that route this year in the year of COVID? Or
I think it's possible, right? It's I mean, they announced Pikmin 3 on Twitter, just like they did with Paper Mario. And that worked out really well for both those games, I think. Both those games got a lot of buzz through that method. I do think that if they do a mini direct, it will kind of come across just like one of those YouTube premiere sort of things that they did with the other stuff, where they like, hey, it's up there now. You can go watch it at your leisure. It's not streaming first and then put up on the thing. But if they do a big general direct, and again, I think that the plans are they're trying to put one together, then that will be like a traditional, a direct as we know it. So we'll have to wait and see how that actually plays out. But yeah, I think you're right to say that they want to do more of these, a more variety of the way they announce things, stuff on Twitter, stuff on YouTube, and in addition to traditional live streams.
Gotcha.
If the Mario things are definitely happening, and Rebecca, by all accounts, they are. As I've been telling you for 6 months now. We don't know, but we know. They've got to start saying something soon. Like, they can't hold on to that any longer. Like, they're running out of time at this point. If it's still 2020, because I would.
This month, man.
The thing that I've been excited about with this is I expect them to make like a kind of a spectacle out of this. I was expecting, from your initial reports, the things I've been saying this whole time, maybe some sort of themed console, maybe some sort of collector's edition, like a big promotion, to really get people primed. Because it's remasters, and sometimes people don't get excited for ports, but these are Mario ports, and some of them are long beloved Mario ports, and I'd expect them to give it a little bit more pizzazz than normal.
Yeah, and I think they found that when when Odyssey sold very, very well, they're like, oh wait, 3D World is now, or 3D style Mario games are the kind of Mario games that people want now. For a long time, it was 2D Mario games, and then they're like, wait, the world's changed suddenly in front of our eyes without us sort of realizing it, and now it's like, oh, these are the real Mario games that going forward that we should be focusing on. And I think that makes them think like, okay, so let's go back, bring all those 3D Marios forward, sell them again to that new audience that has shown up because now they're used to 3D games because they're younger and they've grown up playing 3D games in a way that the previous generations had not. And now they want to do this for the 35th anniversary. They want to make a big deal out of it. I think you're right. I think a themed console, which I think that's speculation on my part, but it makes sense, right? To have they haven't really done a ton of those yet with the Switch. Put that out there with Mario theming, with this game sitting side by side on the shelf. If it is packaged like an All-Stars, kind of make a big deal out of that. You could bundle that if you bundle that, right? That's like
you said the right words.
Yeah. You call back to like that to that time when you did that with the Super Nintendo, and that's if you bundle that at $300 or even like $320, $330, that's like a really good deal. And you look really good compared to these very expensive upcoming next gen consoles. So
exactly.
I don't know how much they feel the pressure to compete on price with stuff like that. So they might just put it out at $300 and then have the game at $60 side by side, and it still will sell really well. So who knows? But yeah, they have a lot of options here with how they roll this stuff. I would expect that there will be kind of a big dump of information. But if they want to just do a Mario event where they're just talking about the Mario stuff, they have enough where they could fill up 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes with just Mario, with going over these past games, talking about 3D World Deluxe, talking about bringing the original, this is speculation, but bringing the original Mario All-Stars to the Nintendo Switch Online. So, yeah, that would be great. Super Mario RPG, please, like a personal favorite of mine, get that on Nintendo Switch Online. That's 20, 25 minutes right there alone. And then if you have a Mario themed console, you could fill up the rest of the time. So yeah, my hope is kind of let's get this Mario stuff out there this month, and then if you're going to do a follow-up general direct talking about other games where maybe you finally give us an update on where Metroid is, give us an update on Zelda, that would be fantastic as well, of course.
Save the 2021 talk because we're going to get into that later, but I'm going to try to get us back on track, and I'm going to start here, Jeff. It goes without saying, you, sir, have absolutely crushed it this year. So, hats off, claps around the board. I mean, you were fantastic. I just wanted to ask you, how's 2020 been? With all the coverage and I guess the success and the following and everything you've been raising. I followed you to several other podcasts. I actually have been quoting you from the Nate the Hate podcast on our podcast to our listeners. So I bring your name up quite a bit. Obviously, it's been a tough year, right? With pandemic and protests and everything. But in the gaming space, it's been a crazy year. We don't have E3 and we've got these consoles launching, but they're not launching. But Halo's delayed and then Nintendo just quiet. And then here you are, Jeff Grubb, superstar. You're hitting all the things. You're doing all the right things. How's it been, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to it's hard. COVID-19 has not been easy for anybody. I'll get personal. I had a pay cut because of COVID-19, when it happened. So it's that kind of makes life a little bit harder. My wife's continued working. She's a teacher, but teaching
That's
right now is
hard.
very difficult on its
Yeah.
own.
I bet.
So it's like figuring that out, like trying to help her and make sure like I empower her to figure that out with 2 young kids is challenging on its own. But you know, it was always kind of hard. Like even before COVID-19, I worked from home with 2 kids all the time, so it's like I'd kind of grown accustomed to life being pretty challenging and just sort of figuring it out and just dealing. So I felt like I was in a pretty good shape relative to like where a lot of other people were coming from, where like they've had options taken away from them that they can no longer go to, and I had already sort of forgone a lot of that. So, but then like you're right, it's like weird to get like this professional boost while all this other stuff is happening, and it's been
during a pay cut. I'm going to say it.
Right,
It's like,
I know,
what?
during a pay cut too, right?
Pay cut? Jeff Grubb is
I know.
blowing up. What are you doing?
I know, but
Yeah.
it's all across the board. Hopefully, we'll get that money back soon. But
It's
whatever.
business,
It's business. But like, it's. I'm a millennial, and we never are good at taking like credit or like taking compliments. Like I always
That's
feel
true.
like I'm. We were told throughout our youth that like, oh, how special we are, and so we kind of grew kind of numb to that stuff. Like it's just like, I could tell you're lying right now. I could tell, and like I became that way as a kid, and it's very hard to shake that now that I'm an adult. So when people like say this, like, oh, you're having a great year, you're blowing up. My instinct, my gut reaction there is to be like, come on, no, please stop. But I've also learned over time, like I should just say thank you.
You
Thank
earned
you.
it.
Like yes,
earned it.
thank you. I'm trying. I am trying really hard to do this stuff, and and you know what? It's hard work, and it's a lot of you can't please everybody sort of thing. Where there's always someone mad about something.
I saw your
I'm
PlayStation
reporting.
tweets today. We were
Yeah,
talking about it
and
in
like-
our Discord earlier, and then
Yeah.
when you followed it up, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, I shouldn't, but it's like I'm trying to find out like what's going on with one thing, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is just a hunch, but maybe there's something here. Someone tell me more about it. And there's people that are like mad at like, you guys just your whole ideology here is just consume, don't ask questions. That meme, like that's just what you guys want me to be. Just get you hyped, and if it's a good thing, you want to hear about it early, and you love it. And if it's a thing where I'm like trying to find out more about these rumors I'm hearing, you want me to just shut up about it. It's like but yeah, you can't please everybody, and it's like, oh well, I kind of can't waste my time like trying to please everybody, and that's fine. But
Of course.
yeah, it's like still like I look around though, and it's like if I look out the window at the world, it's hard to feel really great as well, just because the world
Sure.
is such a mess, and it's and so even with like the personal growth that I've had with my career, it is still very hard to be like, oh, this has been a good year, because it just hasn't been, just flat out, of course, hasn't been. I will say. I do get the sense that like somehow my name has become linked to this E3 2020 now, and in the future, I think you're right. Like my name might be recognized alongside that, and that is very weird to like have that realization. It's like you can't plan that. Like I was saying earlier, it had to happen on accident. If I had tried to make this happen, like if this was my plan all along, it never would have worked out that way. But I think it's part of it is like people recognize like I am just kind of approaching this summer game mess stuff with the idea of having fun and making sure that other people are like getting excited about the same things I'm getting excited about. And when I do know stuff, especially if it's stuff I'm getting through reporting and not through embargoes, I can be kind of cheeky with how I tease it, because I can give a little bit more than you can give if you're under an embargo, and let people try to guess it. And I'm having a good time there, because I'm not trying to spoil a lot of this stuff. It is fun to go in there and get the surprises. The marketing teams worked really hard. They're trying to surprise people. And I think if someone wants to like sniff it out and go check out my Twitter and figure it out on their own beforehand, I don't think that's going to ruin what those marketing teams are doing. And it's fun to be a part of that. And it's fun to like try to give people a little bit of breadcrumbs to like replicate at home the E3 experience that I used to get every year. And now who knows what's going to be like in the future.
Let them eat hype, man. Let them eat
Exactly.
hype.
That's right. It's my motto.
That leads to the next question that I'm going to ask. We have this summer game mess, all these separate events. I can't keep up with them anyways. Like I keep missing events left and right. And I wish I could just go all in once again at E3. I regret saying that I want E3 gone. So do you think E3 will come back after this year? This summer mess, or will folks continue on with what they're doing with their own events?
I mean, it's going to be tough. I think then a lot of people are going to look at the numbers and look at the metrics and be like, oh, but we had so many viewers in 2020. Why don't we just do that again? And they're going to forget that the reason they had so many viewers is that everyone was locked at home. So they can't even like go to the movies. So they're just looking for any sort of entertainment they can get. And sometimes that's just a live stream of a video game thing. So yeah, of course their numbers were inflated. I think that if people step back from that and they look at the reception to what's happened this year, I think they'll quickly realize that week of E3 is beneficial for more than just getting people in one place physically. It gives the at-home viewer, the at-home consumer who is limited in their own time in their own way, a way to be like, I am going to dedicate just 1 week to consume as much game news as I can, and then I can go back to my real life in the next week and be like, oh, that was a great time. I'll have stuff to talk about, but I don't have to worry about missing stuff anymore. It all happened. It was great. It was a great time, and there's a lot of value there because people want to be a part of this ongoing promotion for video games. It's a lot of fun. It's for a lot of people, it's just as much fun as playing the games, and so. And if by spreading it out, we've quickly discovered that it burns people out. People get even more cynical. Mistakes are amplified, I think, to a point where if you have a bad show, it's kind of all anyone talks about for a couple of weeks. And then if you have a bad show at E3, there's a couple hours, and then there's another show, and then people are talking about that instead. Now, I mean, that can have a double-edged sword sort of thing where if you have a good show, people might also forget about it. But I don't think it necessarily is quite as much of a problem if you have a good show. People tend to remember that stuff, but I think E3 does a better job of hiding mistakes, and I think again that has value. So I think coming out of this, when companies are looking at next year, I think a lot of them are going to be like, wait, no, let's try to go back to E3 and let's we have a chance now to really change what it is, but let's try to do it again in a smarter way and see what that can be. That's still going to require the ESA though, and the ESA is just a mess. They just really they don't know what E3 should be. So if they are, if they're the ones in charge of making this happen, still, just like if they don't like hire a company just to do it, who knows? People might not want to work with them. So I hope it happens. Yeah, I personally prefer it, even with this being a good year for me personally. I still would rather just go back to regular E3 next year for sure.
I know Sony got a lot of good coverage with their stuff, and a lot of people are talking about how its metrics and its viewership and how many people watched online and everything. Is that across the board though? Like, is everybody's metrics up? Like, did the Guerrilla Collective do gangbuster numbers?
So I think it was I can't remember who. I think it came out of Newzoo or one of these metric companies, and they said that it was mostly up across the board for anyone that was like of any scale. So like Ubisoft's thing was bigger, and Sony's thing was bigger, and Microsoft's stuff was bigger, but the smaller companies actually, and like the smaller shows, like PC Gaming Show was down. Yeah. So like the smaller stuff kind of actually did pay a little bit of a price.
That was a point I've been bringing up quite a bit, is that I feel like there's a responsibility on these big publishers and platform providers to shine a spotlight on the sports stories of the world, the Kanaz of the world and stuff like that. And at E3, they had more time to do that.
Yeah, and you would think like it's kind of a counterintuitive. You would think they would have more time in this spread out environment, but you find that because you've spread out people's attention so much, you really do have to get in and get out quick. You have to like really just hit them with the stuff that matters, and that leaves a lot of games on the side. You're right, and I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, I'm all for Jeff Grubb hosting E3 2021 next year.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's do the show floor. Jeff Keighley, go to the background, go backstage,
go get my coffee,
elbows.
Jeff.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm all about it.
Jeff, you've been with VentureBeat since I think 2012, was it?
Yeah. I started like freelancing for them around that time, kind of on contract. Yeah.
How did you get your start in games journalism? And do you have any advice to our listeners who would be looking to get into that field?
Yeah, it's just like I've been doing this for a long time, and I only started getting that question recently. So I'm like, I guess that's just one of those things when people like saw my name coming up more often. I'm like, I can ask this guy this.
Means you made it.
Yeah, now I have like I've like refined my answer to this a little bit. So I got my start in like 2012 is when I like started popping up writing on VentureBeat. I started writing a little bit before that for smaller sites, combo.com, just kind of like an amateur joystick.com, like in joystick.com doesn't even exist anymore. So that gives you an idea of where Combo was. But it was just kind of, I got paid like $200 a month on combo.com to write a couple of stories a week. It wasn't a lot. And I was, working at Jimmy John's and Subway all that time as well.
Wow.
Yeah. it was a passion, and I'm lucky. I'm a suburban white kid who got to live with his parents for a really long time, and even because I was like, a mess up, and they had my back for a long time, so it enabled me to pursue this thing that wasn't paying a lot of money when a lot of other people couldn't. But I did have that opportunity, and I just kind of kept working at it. And Combo.com sort of folded, and I kind of got discouraged, and I was looking around. I'm like, I think I might just kind of give up on this stuff. And at the same time, I had some friends that were volunteering at bitmob.com, and Bitmob was a couple of the guys that ran EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly, left and started bitmob.com. And it was supposed to be like this community blogging service where gamers would write the blogs, and the blogs would get promoted up, and then real editors would go and take those stories and make them even better. And it was kind of like this, the idea was you would write these blogs for free because you were getting like all this direct work with an editor, and there was value in that. And that's what ended up helping me a lot. And a friend who's doing the volunteer work at Bitmob with everyone else, everyone was unpaid volunteer there. He said, "Hey, just come and write a couple stories for us, like just on like Tuesdays and Thursdays." I'm like, "Oh man," because at this point I was gonna just give up and like try to, find whatever my other career was going to be. And I didn't go to school or anything like that. So I was like, not a lot of options. And it was like that quarter life crisis sort of thing. But then, so he asked me to do that. And I did that. And that's where I kind of got close with guys like Dan Shu, who did run EGM, and a few others. And then when Dan went to VentureBeat, because a friend of his was working there, and like they wanted to like improve their gaming coverage, and like his friend was like, "Hey, well, we can get Shu, and that would give us a big name." He went there, and he's like, "Hey, I'm kind of like folding Bitmob into them, and I'll see what I can do for everyone else." And he was trying to build the gaming stuff, and I was like, I really don't know how to freelance. I think that's what I have to start doing if I want to keep this going. Yeah. But I think Mass Effect 2 or 3 came out or something like that, and the faces wouldn't work from one game to the other. Like you could make a face in one game, and it was supposed to transfer to the next game so that your character could continue, and that wasn't working. And I'm like, "Hey, this is broken. You want to just like hire me freelance to write the story for you real quick?" And he said yes. And I got into the system. I got like the tax information filled out and did my first story. And then like, once you're over that hump and like someone's paying you, it's a lot easier to be like, well, let's just have Jeff write the next story. So I very quickly started writing more and more stories each week, and kind of did that freelance for a long time, then did contract work. And then eventually they hired me on full time. And now, it's we still have a small team of writers there, just kind of, 4 people on GamesBeat, but it's been working for us, and it's been fine. It's been a good year for us. 2020 has been really good. So
nice.
Oh, and the advice, yes. Don't you're gonna look around. Like the reason I wanted to be in this industry, I think a lot of the times was I did grow up like reading EGM, and I did grow up go on like N64.com before it became IGN, and I knew all the I would read all the people there that were working there and be like, man, I want to be among those people and be their friends. And what I realized over time is you're not going to become their friends. You're not going to even if you do establish yourself, they have their cliques, and what you should be focusing on is looking around at other people who are at the same stage as you, who are also up and coming, who are also hungry. And you should be building the next click with them. They are going to be your support group. They're going to, once they start getting to positions of importance, they will be able to either give you tips on like jobs, tips on information that's happening, behind the scenes, stuff like that. And that's the key. It's people. Like we're a social animal, and your writing can get better, and working with editors can help with that stuff. And you can know the most about games. I guarantee there's someone that's going to know more. But if you establish a network of other people who are like-minded, and next time, and suddenly you're going to find that people are looking up to you and realizing they want to be a part of your clique, and that's where you want to be. It's very valuable to try to build something like that.
Wow. That hit home. I mean, that is largely like kind of a PSVG algorithm, if you will. I mean, we got together, we started as 4, and now we're a team of 13. We started with 1 show, and now we have like 8 shows. And we've all come up together with the Sean Capris of the world and our friends too, and we've all done the same thing. And they get an in, and they get a guest, and we get an in, and we get a guest, and then we do crossovers and we cross promote. And well, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see that I took to that pretty well. So typically every show we start with what we're playing, And we were like, we're not going to waste time on that this week because we have Jeff Grubb. And then we usually jump into This Week in Nintendo, where we talk about news. And we're so thankful that Jeff Grubb came on because there's no news. Like there's very little news in the Nintendo world.
Not much happening now.
Guys, Oceanhorn 2 is coming to Switch this fall. I played that on iPad. It's not good. Like it's not
Really?
super great. It looks
a bummer.
It looks better than it is in trailers. That I'm for sure. Maybe Switch plays it better, right? Like that's the hope. Is that Switch? It was like choppy. It's kind of like it's Skyward Sword, but it's not. It's like half a Skyward Sword. You know, it's just Skyward Sword. To say Skyward Sword
Knife.
light would be nicer to it than it needs to be. So, and I don't mean to crush them. I loved their other game, and it was the Blossom Tales, and was the first one, the Oceanhorn, the Wind Waker thing. Like that one, I think was better. I think this might have been too much so they can chew off, but that was just my experience. I played on Apple Arcade, played on iPad, 2019 model, not the Pro. So maybe it has more to do with it, but it did not run great. So we're just going to jump into our questions. We're going to keep the night of Jeff Grubb going, and we got a lot of questions, so I'll kick it off. You already kind of touched on it, but I'm going to add a little qualifier here. Colbert asks, how much longer do you anticipate Nintendo silence to last? Jeff Grubb, no indies. No third-party promo shows. We talking Nintendo silence. I want to hear from Nintendo.
Yeah, I think that it's tough because there is so much like mud in the water here because after that last show, they're like, and we're going to have more partner directs. And so when you start hearing rumors and people are like not being very specific about what they're hearing as well, when they're trying to like convey it to me, I'm like thinking, well, that could be just a partner direct, what you're talking about. So, but you know, if I had to place a bet, I would say that the latest you're going to have to wait. This does feel like a very long time, but by like the middle of September is the longest I think you'll have to wait.
I think
that doesn't feel
fine.
long.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel long. Okay, good. Like I feel like people seem so desperate, and like everyone's like looking at my thing, and they're like, something's definitely happening in the next 7 days. Oh my god! But I do think like if you are talking about that meaty Nintendo Direct announcement stuff, I think the middle of September is your best bet. So, yeah.
Okay,
That's close.
Can I follow that up? I wanted to ask you this. I just now popped off in my head. We've been talking about COVID's implications, and I actually have been echoing your thoughts. I've been saying all year, my co-hosts know this better than most, I've been saying all year long that this would be a lighter year for Nintendo. I expected that they needed to kind of reload, that the Switch was kind of like this perfect happenstance where they held off on Wii U because of Wii U that helped them like front load and pack Switch, and now that they've kind of fired a lot of bullets and a lot of ports, like they need to reload. But here's the thing that I don't understand. Has COVID adversely affected Nintendo more than others? Because Xbox and PlayStation are still getting games out. We're seeing third parties, Ubisoft and stuff, they're still getting games out. There's still delays, but they're still getting games out. There's a sentiment that Nintendo's just not doing anything, that they just ported a couple games, they've taken the year off. I didn't have that sentiment, but I want to know if maybe you could speak to that. Maybe they're having a harder time dealing with this from where they are compared to where everybody else is?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things there. It has affected them more than Sony or Microsoft because of the way that Nintendo does business. Sony, the games division, is not in Japan anymore. It's a European, North American sort of business now. It was North American, now it's more European under Jim Ryan, but not Japan is the point there. And Microsoft obviously not in Japan. Now, why does that matter? Japan's a very this is going to sound harsh, and I don't really mean it this way, but backward when it comes to a lot of
culturally
technology.
Different. We've tried to speak to that, but I couldn't elaborate to it.
So, I mean, they use fax machines still. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it. Like, they use fax machines to communicate. They're afraid of the cloud. Afraid is a bad word. They just don't use the cloud. So if like a person's working at home and they want to access a lot of their stuff, they're out of luck because Nintendo, a lot of Japanese companies are just hesitant to put stuff on the cloud. You know, you hear stories about Japanese game publishers back in the day didn't want to share any previews with online websites because they thought everything online was just a piracy thing. That's all they understood about the internet. And it's just because they have a way of doing things. They are culturally set, especially in their business, and they're just going to keep doing stuff that way. They got very advanced up until the 90s, and then once everything sort of kind of solidified, they stopped picking up new habits in terms of how to better streamline their businesses. And so this has left a company like Nintendo in a really rough spot where, yeah, they don't have cloud infrastructure to rely on for their workers, but it's deeper than that. They don't like conducting business online. They don't like trying to sign deals where they never meet someone face to face. They don't just it's not just like they don't like it, they find it disrespectful, and that's a big challenge to overcome. You don't just change that sort of culture overnight, even in the face of a pandemic. I bet they are deeply rethinking some of these things now, but it's been a couple of months. So yeah, like maybe they'll figure it out, but it's only been a couple of months, really. As for like the development side, I don't know if Microsoft and Sony are as unfazed as Nintendo. I think we just saw with Halo, COVID being a problem. I think Sony was able to get its games out, but there were some delays there during that period that kind of pushed things back a little bit. I guess Last of Us Part 2 was kind of delayed before all this happened, but still, like, they had extra time to get stuff put together. And so I just don't know that. Yes, their games are probably facing a little bit more trouble because of COVID. It was always going to be a light year. But like, I think when most people are thinking like, why is it hitting Nintendo harder? They're thinking about the stuff like the Nintendo Directs, and the Nintendo Directs are very specifically more difficult to put together because of that cultural stuff, where Nintendo just hates the idea of signing a developer to an agreement to show up in a Nintendo Direct over a Skype call. They find that skin crawly. They just resist it as much as they can. So it was always going to be this way. They are back in the office now. They are like traveling a little bit, so they're able to start putting the stuff together. And like way back in June, I think, when maybe before that, when I reported that like there wasn't going to be a Direct in June, I said it was probably going to be till like August, September, like, wait until the very end of summer before this stuff really starts to happen. And now it is. It was kind of always, I think they always foresaw it kind of going this way. So, and now it is. So I think people you can relax. Nintendo's figuring it out, and games will start coming out again real soon.
Exciting.
Let's hope so.
Yes.
Yeah, Jeff, this comes from Matt. What is your first, like, a Nintendo console, and any memories along with Nintendo? What's like with young Jeff?
Yeah, so I got an NES for my 5th birthday, and that was my first console and some of my best memories for sure. I just told this story on another show recently, so I'll think of another one. I remember Punch Out was one of my favorite games, and we would play it all the time, but like we got so into it that my older brother would like set up our couch cushions as like a series of 3x3 squares, and I would jump on the cushions to like select which boss I was going to fight, like kind of like Mega Man. And then I would jump on one, and it would be a certain Punch Out boss, and I'd pretend to be fighting him and stuff like that. And I think about that all the time. It's like still one of my favorite franchises, and I think it kind of goes back to that as being a young kid with my older brother, like playing this game. And more recently, Breath of the Wild was just a revelation that games could be something special to me again. Like, that game was so good. It was I reviewed that game. I played like 125 hours while I just had like a 3-month-old baby, and I was playing on the Switch, and I'm like, man, oh my God, this system is incredible. I can play this game for real in a way I never would have been able to finish that review if I hadn't been playing on the Switch. Like, I had to have it like handheld to make it happen. But then the game itself is just it's so magical. It's so good. It's it made me believe like, oh, this is why Nintendo can never be counted out, because they believe in games too much. And when if they can reinvent this franchise, the franchise that we never thought they'd be able to reinvent, they were always going to be stuck in their ways. And because they were good ways, the Zelda games were working fine. Yeah, people always complained like, you got to change stuff up, but really they were still always among the best games of any year they came out. And then Breath of the Wild comes along, and it's like they rethought it in such a brilliant way that it's just like, okay, yeah, you can never count on Nintendo. They're always going to find a way to do it again. And yeah, so that game's going to be special for me for like the rest of my life. Absolutely.
Do you see them continuing with the hybrid model for their consoles, or do you think they'll innovate again?
I think they're going to stick with this hybrid model for quite some time. Just from a logistical point of view, they have an ongoing agreement with NVIDIA for I think 20 years was the agreement they signed. So we're going to be like a quarter of a way through that here pretty soon. But that means the next system's probably going to be using similar style NVIDIA hardware. And to me, that says, yeah, just keep doing this stuff. It's working. I'm sure they'll try to find new ways to innovate, but the Switch hits so well. No one else is in a position to do it. Like Sony and Microsoft, even with Microsoft with the cloud stuff, Sony has cloud stuff as well. that is a good idea in terms of like, getting people to play on their phones. But we all know this, that that's still a huge barrier to get me to hold my phone sideways, slap something else on it, worry about the battery draining when I actually need to use this as a communications device. All these things that go on in your head that, like, it's the same reason like phone virtual reality didn't work. People used their phones to do virtual reality once and then they never did it again, because it's just this whole idea of like dedicating your phone to something else and taking it away from actually being able to use it as a phone or Twitter device or whatever. People don't actually like that. So I think that the Switch is such a it just proves that form factor and the way that you're playing games does still really matter. And you could say, oh, cloud, you could play anywhere. And I don't necessarily believe that that's going to get over the hump with most people. I think Microsoft, especially, like if they're going to try to make xCloud work, they're going to have to figure out the hardware side of it too. And that's going to be challenging. And because of this, I feel like Nintendo's not going to have competition in this hybrid space for years and years. Sony and Microsoft are using x86 and they're using very energy inefficient hardware. It'd be very hard to shrink that stuff down into a portable form factor and then still have battery life. Even if you were just trying to do it as like, oh, this is where you're going to play your indies, and then you come home and you play your big games on the big system or something like that. It doesn't work in the same way that it would work on the Switch. So yeah, they should stick with this model, even if they don't plan to. I think it would be a mistake not to.
I agree, for sure. Stephen would like to know, a large number of Nintendo fans seem to think that Nintendo does a poor job of handling expectations or hype and are not communicating well with the pandemic. He wants to know, what do you think about their current marketing communication, especially considering that new consoles are coming soon to compete with them?
I feel like I don't envy their position. I don't envy any game company trying to communicate with gamers. We are very demanding. We have a lot of expectations. There is sort of no winning with us. Like, the only way to win is to have a really big out of the park home run show us all these games, make all these promises, show the logo to Metroid Prime 4. We'll go crazy. And then a week later, we're asking kind of like, what's next? Where is this stuff? These games come out, we play them for a week, we put them down. What's next? That's a tough position to be in. I do not like the like, to me, when I think about people doing that, it gives me anxiety. So I try to have some sympathy for like them trying to manage those expectations, because on the one hand, if you are a company trying to sell a product and you have this very enthusiastic audience, you want to sort of stoke that to a certain extent. But gaming companies found out that it's actually pretty dangerous to do that without being able to back it up. So this idea of managing expectations has become very popular, especially in like the last year. People like that comes up over and over again. People throw that at Sony as well. And I just, it's a hard thing to do. It's very difficult to be like, we're gonna say something to our audience, and everyone is gonna understand exactly what to think. You say one thing to try to get people to understand that like this next show is not going to be that big of a deal, and a lot of people are gonna take that the wrong way and still get really excited for no good reason.
Bakugan.
And yeah, it's gonna be a Bakugan all over again. Exactly. So. Yeah, they're not good at it, but I don't think anyone's good at it. Is the thing, is the real thing here. So, could they get better at it? Sure, maybe, but I think that when they come out with their next big show, their next big Nintendo Direct, no one's going to care. They'll just be happy that there was a show with a bunch of games in it, and everyone will forget about any time that they thought, oh, you weren't good at managing expectations.
Spot on. Brody writes in with very, very fun topic for you. Do you anticipate a similar anniversary for Zelda's 35th next year? If so, what would that look like? And there seems to be a rash of trademarks just filed from Nintendo about Zelda that look a lot like a rash of trademarks that were filed for Mario a year ago. Yeah,
I think so. I think what we're seeing now is, I don't know anything.
Wind Waker,
but,
say it.
Right now, Wind Waker.
Right, you got to get all those Zelda games on the Switch, right? Like you do.
Yes. Yes.
I think that again,
I will happily pay. I'll pay $100, Nintendo. Listen, Wind Waker.
I mean, Breath of the Wild also sold like better than any Zelda game before. They were like, we are in a really sweet spot with our games are really good. These franchises are really good, and the IPs are really strong in terms of their appeal. We have this deal with Universal going forward, where we are going to be making theme parks, and eventually there's going to be a Zelda part of that stuff. And we also have movies coming out. Like, we need to like be really thinking about how we're building up our characters and treating our history. And and I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see it play out well with Mario, and then I think like well, we didn't mention this earlier. Like there could be like a trailer for like the Mario movie dropped among this stuff. I think they're kind of thinking holistically about the way that they treat their IP, and if that works out, like it just makes sense to continue that with Zelda and make next year kind of a similar thing for Zelda, because again, they have a lot of games they could still come up and put on the Switch. I'm sure they have other like smaller, like I'm not sure, but I would think that they have probably like a Link's Awakening follow-up in the works in addition to Breath of the Wild 2. So they might want to start like prepping people for that. Yeah, I really hope so. This is a fun topic because I'm already thinking about it. It's like, oh man, I can't wait. We haven't even got the Mario stuff yet, and I'm already like, yeah, let's do Zelda.
Didn't Netflix have a rumor with Zelda? Was there an animated?
Like that's gone around a couple times too.
Yeah,
like they've been kind of over and over again. Like people like streaming services, I'm sure think about Zelda as like, oh, that could be our Game of Thrones or whatever. And I don't think it would ever work out that way, but I'm sure they're thinking that way.
Yeah.
My Shack mates, I will go ahead and throw this out here. All right, Zelda's 35th anniversary collection. Zelda All-Stars, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword.
Oh, I'd be there.
Oh, we would buy them. You and I would buy them $60 each. But if they actually made a collection of them?
For an All-Stars, I think you would need also a top-down title in there somewhere.
I think you think Link Between Worlds in there, and then you're set.
Ooh,
Optimize
Link Between Worlds would be good.
3DS.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yep. I feel like we would not be as lucky with the Zelda games. I feel like they would do each Zelda game as a $60 game, but
I'll buy them.
That's
whatever.
Kind of what I've been wondering is why we can see that for Zelda games where they package it for $60 individually and we buy it. You don't think that they would do that for Mario and take advantage of?
I do think they would do that for Mario. I absolutely do think they would do that for Mario, and I don't know why they're not. Is the thing? Like I don't.
That's what I mean when
know.
I say it's too good to be true.
Yeah.
That's why
I
it's hard to
agree.
believe that they wouldn't.
I feel the same exact way, but it's like what I've heard makes it sound like a Super Mario All-Stars packaging sort of thing. Like that's what they want to do. I maybe because like Mario 64 is sold. There's more Zelda games, and like there've been more like recently.
They're
think
bigger
I feel like,
too.
Yeah, and they're bigger games. I think that's what Nintendo thinks. And so, I don't know, but I agree with you. Why wouldn't they just do that with Mario? But I feel like they do want to make it a really big deal, and you do that through All Stars. I guess I think they also have really fond memories of All Stars because All Stars was like a really big event. Like when that game came out, it was a big deal. It was like one of the first big remasterings, and people ate that up in a really huge way. And I think that they see themselves repeating that with this new audience that they've built on Switch, and maybe they're just trying to replicate that, and that's why they're sticking to that. Not to say that they haven't done bundles of Zelda games before, they have, but it wasn't as big of a deal, so maybe it's not as fondly remembered. But yeah, the underlying stuff that you say there, though, I agree. I don't know why they wouldn't do it with Mario.
Maybe for like the regular customer, like the non-Nintendo fan, like they would see all these Mario remake games and be kind of like, I don't know, like exhausted seeing them, or like it would be too much for them. It's like
we've even seen with people on our own team that are like, I would do Sunshine but not 64, or I would do this one but not the other one. Maybe bundling just gets everybody playing all of them, and you have like a net positive because the value's so good that it's a must-have item. They've got 50 million Switches in the wild. I think if the Mario collection is what Jeff Grubb says it is, and I have no reason to doubt you, Jeff Grubb, just know I am pro Jeff Grubb. She, on the other hand,
anti. I get it. That's how it is. Yeah. I've felt it this whole time. I get it.
The value would be so intrinsic that everybody would have to buy one. That's a must-have item, whether you want to play them or not. I think
there's definitely logic in what you're saying, and I am not a big Mario fan, but you're right. If there was a collection, we're talking about, okay, there's the collection and then the remaster of 3D World. I'm not buying the remaster of 3D World because I'm not a Mario fan, but I see the value in a collection that's like, okay, this is an item that I, as a Nintendo fan, not necessarily a Mario fan, should have on my shelf.
It's just too good not to. It's too good
not to. If they're trying to like fill out their lineup as well, releasing them individually does feel a little bit like it's anticlimactic. But if you put them all together, that does feel like, oh, that is a game that could hold up an entire month for Nintendo, or maybe even be sort of a pillar of a holiday. But on their own, they wouldn't be. So yeah, maybe there's something there.
Ashley asks, with Xbox and PlayStation launching new consoles in the middle of a pandemic, do you think Nintendo could benefit most by having the Switch available at a cheaper price?
Yeah, I think that's what they're thinking. I think the Switch is going to continue to sell really well, no matter what, because it is at that more affordable price. It has I think it's going to be perceived as having like a more robust library, even though both of these other consoles are going to launch with backwards compatibility. More people are just going to be like, there are more Nintendo Switch games than PS5 or Xbox Series X games, and they're the kind of games that like I know my family likes. I know they like Mario Kart. Let's go get that. I think we've seen the success of Switch over these past couple months when people like have had to turn to gaming because they haven't had other entertainment solutions. I think that's going to continue for some time, and yeah, I think just by being on the shelf at $300 compared to what could be $500-$600 from these other companies, it's going to look really attractive. As for a price drop, I mean, I think there is potential there. I think that if Nintendo does feel like they need to, it's an option for them. That hardware that they have inside the Switch right now, they could easily, they're easily making a profit on that right now. They could easily eat up some of that, still be making a profit, probably drop it down to $250 and do just fine. I don't think they need to though. So I think it's an open question as to whether or not they're going to feel the need to do that. But I think the one way they maybe fight this is do release like a Mario themed one to just get the big fans, the biggest fans of Nintendo really excited. We go out and we buy the Mario version of it. We maybe either hand off our other one to our friend, to our sibling, to a family member, or we sell it secondhand. And this has been their strategy from the beginning, where they don't necessarily grow the audience by like, selling new hardware to new customers. They sell new hardware to the same customers, and then we secondhand hand those out, and then those people begin buying software, and that's how it works. It's worked for them very well.
I have like
Game
4
Boy.
Switches.
Right, yeah.
Or
exactly. Yeah, and it's like you might keep them, but a lot of time most people sell them, and it's like it's just a great strategy for building up your install base. So I think they might try something like that first, where the Mario console could be something like that, or an eventual like Switch Pro or whatever could be something like that as well.
I'll even throw in there as a bundle to help Ashley out. They could absolutely just bundle a game with one of the lights. They could just give a game away. Like, hey, on Black Friday during this week, if you buy a Switch Lite, you just get Pokemon Shield for free. Or you get Mario 3D World for free. And it doesn't cost them anything because those are old games that have already sold through their initial allotment, but it's value added to move consoles. So
and just make it a digital code. So it's like even cheaper.
Yeah.
Barry wants to know, besides the rumored Mario games, what else are you looking forward to playing in 2020?
I am a big Pikmin fan. I really liked Pikmin 3 on Wii U. I think I reviewed it for VentureBeat. So again, that's how long I've been doing this. It's been like 2013. And I have a lot of fun with that. A big part of that is my wife, who likes games but she doesn't take a lot of time to play them. She's very busy. But she has always loved the Pikmin games. She loved them before Pikmin 3. She played both of them, and then Pikmin 3 came out, and it's like the one game she sat down and took time to play. So it'd be like, it might be really fun to kind of go back and either have her play that again, or maybe check out some of these co-op modes that are supposed to be in there or whatever. The multiplayer modes that should be fun as well. I want to see Cyberpunk. I want to play Cyberpunk. I've been looking forward to that for a while. I feel like. Even if it's a mess, I feel like it's going to be an interesting mess. And for me, that's actually a lot of times more fun. I don't need things to be perfectly polished. Perfectly polished games usually end up feeling boring to me. I bounce off of a lot of them. I'm much more interested in something that feels messy, that feels like it has possibility space in it. And Cyberpunk feels like that for sure. I just got Battletoads. I'm probably not allowed to say this, but we'll just keep it between us. Just got Battletoads for review. I'm looking forward to try that out. I played that at E3. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I sat down with Mike from GamesBeat and someone else, and we had a lot of fun just losing over and over on the bike stage.
Nice.
It was. Yeah, we were sitting on the couch having a good time in the middle of the Microsoft Theater or whatever it was, and it was a good time. It reminded me of old Battletoads, and I was kind of excited for it. So I hope they pull it off. I'm sure it won't be most people's game, but it's on Game Pass, so it's like one of those things. So just try it out. There's other stuff, but yeah, mostly Mario. Though. I just want to go back and play all those Mario games again.
Speaking of other stuff, can I get you to hint, say nice things, lead me on the path? Am I crazy to think that we'll get No More Heroes 3 this year? Persona Scramble Strikers?
I'm not sure, but I'm less convinced that it's going to come this year than ever. I feel like
I agree.
Maybe, but I don't think so.
When I saw the rating for the remaster of the port or anything, that was my initial response on Shaq like 2 weeks ago. I was like, well, No More Heroes 3 is totally delayed.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that's right.
Okay, thanks. Our next question is, Nintendo does a direct and they start to show us for the next following year. What does that entail?
Yeah, I think that they once they get past this year, once they get past Mario stuff, it is going to be time to start talking about like where is Breath of the Wild 2, where is Metroid Prime 4. I think they need these games are they're not like becoming albatrosses quite yet, but they are games that they need to get those out before they can really start making new promises, right? Like if they go to next E3 and they start talking about, you know, whatever, like a Mother 4 or whatever, you're like, well, okay, but like we still haven't even got Metroid Prime 4. Like what's happening here? They need to start like really getting those games in a place where they can say, this is what happened. This is what's happening with them. This is what they play like. This is what they look like. And this is when you can expect them. Here's a general timeline. For me, that's what 2021 needs to be. And if it's like they don't have to come out next year, but they need to like be talking about them a lot and making sure that we feel comfortable that they are going to be coming, so that when they do start making other announcements, we can feel excited about those instead of like, oh, is Nintendo kind of losing it with their ability to actually deliver on these promises?
Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll possibly announce a pro version next year? Is it about time to?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's about what, like 4 years
It'll be coming
starting
up
next
before.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will announce something like that. I think it just, like I was talking about earlier, it's just their way of growing the install base, and it has always worked. They've never not done it with a handheld, right? They've the Game Boy Color. They had a DS,
The 3DS.
DSi, 3DS, new 3DS. They will continue to do this, and it doesn't matter like kind of what it is. Like it doesn't matter like what actually makes it pro. What matters is they convince the people that are their biggest fans to buy it. If we all get excited and we think, oh man, I can't miss out on this. I'm so stupid. Like I bought the new 3DS because I was like excited about that right analog nub.
Yeah, that's
I never
amazing.
used that damn thing. I never used that. Maybe I used it one game, but come.
Dude,
Yeah,
you can go from
right.
icons to icons on the OS with that thing. It's amazing.
But that's why I bought that thing, and it wasn't why I enjoyed that thing. But it doesn't matter. That's what they need, that sort of thing to convince people to buy it. Like
You still
ideally,
bought it.
what's that?
You still bought it.
Exactly. No, exactly. And that's what they need to do. They need to convince us like we need these things, even if we don't, because then we will sell our other stuff secondhand or hand them off. And then now they have other people buying games. It's a brilliant strategy. It's one that both Sony and Microsoft tried to replicate with the Pro and the Xbox One X last generation. And it worked to a certain extent, but it's much different in handheld, where it's like where it's a consumer electronics device as opposed to like this big behemoth console. That's
How many
sitting in your
people
entertainment
upgrade
center.
phones and tablets and stuff annually? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And there's a huge secondhand market for that stuff. And it's, I personally, like, if I start like thinking about like what I want, I don't know how likely it is, but I really hope they would put an SSD in there, because I know there's an SSD in iPhones. You can get one that's like 128 gigabytes, relatively like affordable. And boy, that would help with loading times on some of those games. The Animal Crossing was the one where I was like, man, if this would just load faster, it'd be an even better game. And that would be like, that's like my one big wish.
That's a crazy thought. I had never even thought about that. But as somebody who, like, I'm a big proponent of Chromebooks. I've got a bunch of them, and the Chromebooks do have SSDs in them. They are like super small. It would work with the form factor.
Oh yeah.
But it would be a premium price. But that upgrade,
Yes,
to me, would be worth upgrading.
Yeah, I think it would just be it would be the way that they make it a pro. Like I'm sure they'll try other stuff. I'm sure like there are other NVIDIA chips in the waiting that are more powerful that they could put in there. They'll probably do something like that. Maybe
we even talked about
like
the gains that Digital Foundry put out with like super sampling. Like just getting an overclock version of the chip they have could actually get us to reasonable 1080p performance, and that itself would be pro worthy. Yeah,
even putting like some tensor cores in there to do the DLSS stuff, like that would be a huge thing for them. They could still just be pumping out games at relatively the same resolution, but upscaling them to 4K would be pretty cool on a TV. Like that could work. And then like an OLED screen, I think maybe one that runs at 120 hertz would be That would be like the icing on the cake there. I think that would be great. Not
Imagine
they don't need to go
price
to
on that though.
well, no, yeah, for sure. But they don't need to go. They don't need to do a 1080p screen. Even it could still be 720p at that like really small size. It doesn't matter. Like if 720p is more than enough, like pixels per inch. But yeah, 120 hertz. That'd be. I mean, they're starting to do that more and more in phones. And again, these are phones that are more expensive. You're right, but I think that there's a way to pull some of it off and maybe sell that system still at like 350 and call it a Switch Pro or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. These are a lot of these things are just my personal my personal wish list, but I hope they do most of it.
You just got me excited in a way that I've never even thought to go to the SSD route. But that totally is possible. That could work.
That's the biggest one.
Yeah, they're SSD sticks. They're like tiny. They're super thin.
Their iPhone has an SSD in it.
Wow.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I would pay for that because you're right. Like Deadly Premonition 2 would not load for 8 minutes before I could play it. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
That wouldn't
really
fix it,
ancient
Donnie.
memory.
What?
That wouldn't fix it. Don't. Come on now.
It's the least of the problem.
That's beyond help.
All right.
Is it me?
So,
is it you? I forgot.
Well, I think the next one's me. So,
okay.
Yarden Angel asked Breath of the Wild 2, when? And if you have time, who will swerve first in this game of price chicken and announce it first? How much? So the first question is about Breath of the Wild 2. When is it? And then the other one, going to reveal the price.
Any minute now, man. Just wait. Just go look out your window. It's coming for you. I don't know. I wish I knew when the game was coming. My guess is that if it doesn't show up in this next big general direct, which it may, as sort of like a mea culpa from Nintendo to be like, I know we made you wait. Here's the thing you've been waiting for. If it doesn't show up there, it'll be at the Game Awards almost certainly. So we should know. We should know in a couple months. I guess. God, it really is just a couple of months till December. So So yeah, like 3-4 months. We'll find out. I hope that game comes out next holiday. I think it probably will. But I wouldn't expect it before then, though. I guess there's a world where maybe it comes out in March, but I highly doubt it.
I was thinking March. That was what I was going with until COVID. And then once COVID
now
they
pushed too much stuff back. Like that, everything's just going to fall back because of that.
Yeah.
Do you think it could be even past holiday 2021?
Yeah, it could. I think that if it did that, it's because there's more issues than would have already happened, with COVID-19. But I wouldn't bet it comes out next holiday.
A PS5, Xbox. Who goes first?
Yes. So, man, this is one I just don't know. I feel like they don't know. I think this is the whole problem is that they both have reasons to go last, and they have no reasons to go first. Neither of them do. And if you're in that situation, like this is why Microsoft just moved their thing. Their thing was going to happen in August, where they're going to announce Lockhart. They moved it to September, hoping that maybe Sony will do it instead. And Sony is not really planning anything because they're just waiting for Microsoft. Microsoft can't talk about Lockhart without talking about price. So if they get to a situation where they feel like they have to talk about Lockhart, they will have to go first with price. But it's way more important to Microsoft, it seems like, to undercut Sony than it is for Sony to undercut Microsoft. And I think that if it comes down to it and Sony feels like, well, we have to give a price because we have to start talking to retailers, I think Sony could go first and just hope that like they are going to pick the right price that Microsoft is most likely to match and not undercut. But I don't know. And this is the biggest thing. They really just don't know yet. They don't know who's going to go first, so they're just going to keep waiting as long as they can. And this is something I was talking about on another show recently. Thinking about it, like originally I was like, they're going to have to do it in August because they are going to have to tell the retail partners. But if they get creative, they could like get actually way closer to release date before talking about price. If they choose like retail partners, if they do like say, we're just going to work with GameStop and someone else.
Ooh.
And also you can order on our store. And then it's a much smaller circle. You could say, listen, GameStop, I know we haven't told you the price yet, but we're working directly with you, just you pretty much. Most people are probably going to come to you for the console. So just work with us, help us make a big announcement of it 2 weeks before it comes out. Maybe like, I mean, how long before phones come out do they announce price now?
That's true.
I saw your Thanksgiving update today.
I know that's like that was a joke.
I know it was, but
It's
still
starting to come true.
That's the thing. Like I'm now like really thinking about it more. They don't have to tell retailers. They don't. We live in a different world. We live in a world where they could ship things ordered online relatively quickly from their own stores. And most people, that's how like most people get their iPhones is ordering through Apple.com. I guess I don't know if it's most people, but a lot of people do that. And I think they can do the same thing. So, and if they do, yeah, they can wait a really long time still. And it's actually getting kind of frustrating because this is the point where it's like, everyone's trying to decide how they're going to buy games this holiday. Like, what are you actually going to put your money on? And it's really hard to do that. Yeah, you get the savings jar or whatever.
Right
yeah.
I also co-host our Xbox show, and I'm a big reputations lover of the Game Pass. I know it's our Nintendo show, so I won't go too crazy with this, but I think I've thought from the get-go, like since March, there's no way in the world that Xbox would announce a price before Sony. There's zero incentive. They've got to be price competitive, if not better, I think, all things considered. But if Sony truly won't announce until Xbox does, I think there is some business incentive for Xbox to hold off as long as possible. Those are PlayStation 5s that PlayStation's not selling.
Yeah, it's... I mean, but this is like there's always a counter though, right? There's always a reason not to go. Like, I think this is the discussion happening in like Sony's executive room where
their market share is so big.
Yeah.
To not go just because you're afraid of Microsoft for price cutting, it's like they just delayed their biggest game.
But everyone remembers 2013 that E3 when it was like I was in that room when they did that, when they announced $400. It was like I think my first E3, I think. And I'm sitting there and it was just like everyone knew at that point it was kind of already over.
Yep.
Even with all the other stuff that was happening with the online stuff, when Microsoft said $500 and then a few hours later that night Sony said $400, it was like, oh, okay, there's no reason not to get the PlayStation instead. And everyone, and I think everyone is either scarred by that or like holds it up as like, if you're at Sony, you hold it up as like, we have to do that again, or at least match. We can't be in a situation that Microsoft was in. And the only way to ensure that is to go last. So
sure.
And I don't go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. And I think Sony, like it fully relies on like a lot more on PlayStation. There's a lot more at stake with PlayStation because of that success with PS4. And I think that company itself is like, if the PS5, if there's any chunk in the armor there, it's not going to be as good for that company. Now, Microsoft can eat it a little bit. So I think Sony's still, and they might have to as well.
Yeah, I think the thing is we also just don't know yet a lot about these consoles. I think we feel like we know them, but it's before the Xbox One and PS4 came out, it was really hard to tell like, oh, the Xbox is going to have some issues with running games, and the PS4 is kind of running everything kind of how you would hope for the most part, 1080 30 frames per second. And I think we're all just assuming that both these consoles are going to run all games fine. I think we don't know that yet. My hunch, just based on looking at the power and looking at like the way Sony definitely amped up the GPU clocks to try to match Microsoft a little bit, to me that says like maybe the issues could be with Sony, but I don't know that for sure. Microsoft absolutely could have issues somewhere along the line that just makes maybe that memory like bandwidth stuff actually is going to be an issue, and that's where the problems come from. But the point is that this is new hardware that developers are trying to get used to, and Sony trying to match Microsoft's teraflops number and turning up like a GPU to 2.23 gigahertz, whatever it is, which is just kind of a really astronomical number for a clock speed on a GPU. Most of them don't go above 2.0 gigahertz. There could be issues, and it's like if we get a couple months in and you're the more powerful, you're the more expensive console, and the story becomes, oh, also there are issues here, which again I don't know, speculation, but if that becomes the story, then that is a really big problem, and that's really where like Microsoft was more expensive, and some people maybe were willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, and then that you started hearing like 720p compared to 1080p, and it was all over. It was all over. 900p. Yeah.
I'm loving this both as a fan of yours, a fan of Xbox, but also as a fan of watching Rebecca's brain melt. She's just none of this matters. The Switch. And it's lovely 400p display.
Graphics in person. Give me the exclusives. Give me the fun games.
Yeah,
I'll play.
I have a really powerful PC, and I use it to play the junkiest looking stuff I can find on Steam. So
nice.
But basically the same thing. Yeah.
I think this is our last question.
Yeah.
It was kind of there was some talk in the chat we saw with some Fortnite drama that I think has been going on this past couple hours. So we had the Zelda Gift World in chat ask, I think everyone on Shack should pick a side, Epic or Apple.
Dude, Google just kicked Fortnite off too.
Wow.
Yep.
And Epic
Yikes.
filed a lawsuit. Like, this is becoming like the biggest story.
This is crazy.
I'm not going to pick a side in that because they both can go to hell. But
Exactly.
if in an ideal, I guess not. This is not an ideal world. The ideal result of this is Epic forces Apple to make some changes that benefits all developers.
Yep.
I'm very skeptical that that's the way it'll play out.
Yep.
My hunch here is that it'll work out just fine for Epic. There might be some concessions for Epic, and then Epic will be like, okay, that's fine, and not continue to fight for everyone else like everyone else seems to think they will. But I just really dislike the way Tim Sweeney presents a lot of this stuff. He always calls the store pricing like a tax. It's not what a tax is, bro. This is not a tax. It's a fee that you pay to have the access to this audience that these companies built up. And I'm not defending Apple or Google, but this is just the reality of the world that we live in, that these companies spent the money investing to build these audiences, and they do things that if it didn't exist, if there were like no stores, if there was no Steam or no Google Play or no App Store, and everyone had to like sell things ad hoc on the internet, it would cost you way more than 30% per game to like do customer service, to handle returns, to deal with the credit card companies. This is something like old developers talk about. They're like, I'm friggin' happy to pay 30% to Steam because I know how much all this stuff cost in the before. Before, it was like a nightmare. Now this company's just going to do it and only take 30%. It's worth way more than that. But yeah, I'll give them 30%. And that's the reality here, is that the market value of what Steam and what Google Play and the App Store all provide is 30%. That's why most people pay it. That's why most people accept it. They don't like it. It sucks. It maybe does keep some developers from becoming profitable, and that's kind of awful. Maybe there should be a way for smaller developers to make money. But Tim Sweeney making it about like, oh, it's this unfair tax, and really it's not providing that much value. If it wasn't providing that much value, you would have found a way around it when you tried to go around it on Google, right? On Android, you tried to stay out of the App Store. You tried to do it on your own on this platform that does allow side loading, that is actually technically open, and yet you couldn't make it happen because the real value is having that audience that is on Google Play. And is it a monopoly? Absolutely. I don't give a shit if we try to break up these monopolies. Go for it. I don't care. But Tim Sweeney is just he's just he gets under my skin, and I feel like I get more frustrated with him than I should. Because
you're talking me off my base, man. I came here ready to go full Team Epic, not necessarily for.
No,
it's the democratic freedom fighter mentality that they look at 30% and they're like, it's too much, and we want to make and they back it up themselves. They don't take 30% on the Epic Game Store. They don't seem to think they need to. Now they're bankrolled by their juggernaut game, and I guess that's the part that I like about it. I don't think anybody else can do it. Only they can, and they're trying to do it for everybody else. And I'm not saying that 30 across the board or anything is a thing, but I do feel like, and I don't have the knowledge you have to break everything you just said. 100% sounds right to me, but I felt like, and I guess this comes back to the xCloud stuff on phones and everything, and the different store purchases and whatnot. But 30% is a lot to say everybody does 30%, because everybody's not the same, right? Epic does huge business. Why are they paying 30% when you are making so much money off of them? They should probably not pay that much. And likewise, if you're not doing a certain amount of business, like maybe you shouldn't pay so much because you can't afford to. I feel like there's a sliding scale here that could be implemented that could be better for all. And I'm hoping at least that's where Epic goes. I don't think it will. I think these companies, these billion trillion companies, they've got lawyers that'll keep this up forever. They'll argue over. It's going to be super hard to prove antitrust. I don't know if anything will actually happen to me. At the end of the day, I just think they'll just go to court. We live in a pretty different country than we lived in the 90s with Microsoft, or the early 2000s when Microsoft had its antitrust case. It's very easy to get a judge right now that will be like, I don't care about that. Yeah, that's not something that I really care about. They'll just argue and it'll just stay the same.
Like, oh yeah, the App Store is included for free, and you're giving away your game for free. Well, that sounds like it's good for customers. So go ahead, and everyone's fine. I know that there's a lot of developers out there that are really hopeful that Epic can break Apple and make them lower their take, because that would benefit a lot of developers, and that would be a good thing. I just don't believe that this is. I don't think this is going to do it. Now, does that mean they shouldn't try? Because I don't believe it. Of course not. Go for it. Let's see what happens. I guess anything that might shake things up could help. But my gut here just tells me this is going to be. It's going to be a lot of billionaires beating their chests. There might be some action in the EU where Apple has to pay a fine and maybe makes a few changes. But you look at the way. I guess maybe that interest thing with Microsoft did work, because most people use Chrome now and don't use Internet Explorer. But I think that what could happen is Apple might say, "Oh, you can sideload things because we have to go in line with what a court ordered us to do and allow people to sideload stuff just like they do on Google to make it a technically open thing." And then all of a sudden, everyone can pirate games really easily on Apple, and all these smaller developers go out of business anyhow. And it actually doesn't help Epic either, because that didn't work on Android. It's just, I don't know. If he really wanted to change things, I feel like there's other ways to do it. But he's allowed to try, and suing sometimes works. So we'll see.
What about you two, Epic or Apple?
Well, I have no dog in this fight either way.
Can I make a case that you do?
Okay, go for it.
All right, here's the case that you do. The reason why this is Nintendo related, today Epic launched discounts, like basically permanent price drops if you buy from them through a storefront that's not mobile. So Switch across the board is cheaper today. Also, we should care about 30%, because guess who also takes 30%? Nintendo. And their business is basically built on making sure they get that 30%. So I think you do have a dog in the fight. It matters.
Well, it's just that, first off, I don't play Fortnite. I'm not invested in Fortnite at all. So whatever they pull off of Apple or Google or whatever system, I don't really care for. Now, the belief, I understand both sides. I understand the belief that 30% probably shouldn't be the same for everyone for all the reasons that you said. But I also think that, it's just sort of weird how the messaging is with Fortnite. Because I can understand the legal battles. I've read the legal battles with Nintendo all the time with trademarking. I don't need to know the legal battles of this certain
That's why we still don't have digital refunds.
Well, the way they market Fortnite, it's just here's this gray video and here's this Apple monopoly. And it's trying to cartoon, like trying to personify this case that makes them the good guy, releasing this rainbow freedom or
marketing
whatever
narrative that is I find very off-putting. Yes,
it made me uncomfortable just watching that.
Gave me a little bit of anxiety thinking about the person having to put this cartoon together, trying to it's man, we know the end goal here, because the thing that they lampooned was the 1984 commercial that Apple did, and it's just these two corporations using 1984 to fight each other. Boy, that is really stupid. That's
really dumb.
Real dumb.
Yeah. It's real petty, isn't it?
Yeah, we know it's petty and a little childish. It makes me think, that they're in it for the marketing and getting their name out there more than anything.
Yeah,
they just can't talk it out. They just got to fiery advertisements at each other.
Yeah, and we know how it played out with the original 1984 advertisement, where Apple's we're gonna go against the man and fight against IBM, who's trying to control your digital future, and now Apple controls our digital future, and it's and Epic's well, no, for real this time we're gonna go out there and we're gonna fight the man, and we won't become the man. It's homie, I know who you are. We all know what you are.
I've read this story before.
Exactly, we know how this ends. We don't believe you. I don't believe you at all. I know you. Oh, we were passing the savings on to you, and we're only charging so much on our store. But these are just momentary moves to disrupt the market and to make yourself the most important player in the market. And then once no one's there to compete with you, we know what happens. So I just don't believe you. And if we really want to change, I don't want it to come from Epic. I want it to come from us. We should be able to kind of decide the way that this stuff works. Democracy, right? We should be able to actually decide the way our actual lives are affected by these things. But we don't have billions of dollars. They do, so they get to decide. And it's disheartening.
We want free market. I'm so happy we asked that question. That was excellent. Excellent conversation. I'm sorry for the rain. It's hailing right now. I'm not sure.
I can't hear it all.
Oh, it is. If you keep seeing me look aside, it's because lightning, thunder, hail, things are happening about 4 feet away
all
here.
the time where I'm at. We're at or like 5,500 feet. So like it's always like right before the hail melts. So it hits us all the time. And it's like one of the reasons my car insurance is so high. Every car just gets messed up.
That's gonna do it for us in the show. Unless anybody else has any other questions they'd like to ask our guest.
I'm good.
Not a question, but just thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
No, thank you for having me on. I'll do this anytime. This is a really good time. You guys have a good show here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And like I said at the top of the show, major, huge fan. Continue to sign up for all the alerts. Everybody out there, make sure you're following Jeff Grubb over there at VentureBeat. Read his articles, share the articles, promote all the stuff. It's just amazing stuff. You're one of the best in the biz. And
thanks,
thank
man.
you.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, that means a lot.
Thank you for dropping by the Nintendo Shack. And that is going to wrap it up for this week in the Nintendo Shack. We hope that you enjoyed us hanging out with Jeff Grubb. And we'll be back next week with games that we're playing and all those good impressions. I have a review copy of a game myself that I'm excited to share with the rest of Shackers next week. So that'll do it. Good night, Koopalings.
Bye-bye.